Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of the Footballocks podcast, or FB. We're going to have a little chat today about our least favourite transfer rumours, whether that be because we don't like them, because they're horrible people, whether that be because they're too expensive, don't fit the manager, don't fit the style, whatever it is, we're just going to have a little chat, and we won't keep it all about Villa, we promise. So, yeah, Matt, take it away. We might as well start with Villa now we've mentioned it. What's your least favourite Villa rumour?
Hmm. That ketchup guy.
Bella Kotchap.
Yeah, because when we played Southampton, he was rubbish.
Is that it?
Pretty much. There's actually not really any basis for that one. Um,
Well, do
I
you?
just don't know enough about him. To be honest, it's actually quite a hard question because we're linked with like loads of good players and barely any bad ones. So
Yeah. Well, I think you
hard to
have to
pick.
go into more of the detail on Bella Kotchap, don't you? It's not about the player. The player is a young defender who's joined a very young team that weren't playing well this season, and has had some sort of standout moments, especially earlier in the season. I heard some people compare him from a physicality perspective to likes of Haaland, which you know,
Jesus.
really make what comparisons you will. It says a lot about him. If anyone's willing to make that comparison, just in terms
Hmm.
of physicality, he is both-footed as well, so can cover on both sides, kind of like Diego
Like that.
Carlos. So it's definitely someone I'd like in the club, if only for a squad option, if nothing else. You know.
Yeah, no, I mean, in all seriousness, he's probably a good player. Southampton signed him for a reason. He's 21. Um, as you say, he's both footed, which is very desirable. Depends how much money, but like I can't imagine him costing that much money.
Well, that's the issue. It's he's rumored to come in for 30 million, which is if
Ooh,
you're looking at signing not Ferran Torres, Pau Torres for around 40 million, maybe just over, are you
yeah,
really going
Jesus
to spend
Christ.
75% of that
Yeah,
again
there's no comparison there.
on a relegated centre back at Southampton who's 21
Yeah,
years old?
no,
No, that doesn't represent good value for money. Even if he turns out to be the next bloody Thiago Silva, point is he isn't that right now, and he's not worth the risk based on what we've seen so far.
yeah,
I
no,
could see 15 to 20 arguably reasonable, but anything more than that, like you've got the likes of Inigo Martinez we've been linked with, for example, who's
yeah,
free. You know, it's proven top five league defender for years and years now. Great on the ball, really good reader of the game. Someone that Unai Emery could really work with in terms of building up from the back and playing out from the back. Whereas Bella Kotchap has not really proven he can do that at all. He's just a powerhouse of a defender um, who's going to get a lot of clearances, blocks, tackles. You'd hope,
yeah. I
but
don't know how much that profile of defender is that appealing in an Emery system. Um, we play such a high line that while that does mean that pace is quite a desirable attribute, I don't know if he is that fast. Is he fast?
yeah, he's pretty quick. Yeah,
Um, you also, if you're playing a high line, you really need players who are kind of agile. They need to be changed. They need to be able to change their body position really quickly to play the offside trap and then recover if it gets broken. I don't know if a kind of physically dominant kind of player who's maybe not as good on the ball is necessarily what we're looking for.
well, the thing is, when you say agile, you know, what's what's kind of the opposite of agile in a general
Clumsy.
sense? Yeah, and who in our team is clumsy but somehow playing incredibly?
Uh, can't think of anybody.
Come on, don't make me force it
Nobody.
out of you.
No, can't think of
Not
anyone.
my own things.
I don't know my own things. I only know the dancer on ice, Tyrone Mings.
Yeah. Well, he obviously has played really, really well since Emery's come in. He's been good on the ball. He's been solid at the back. He's made very few mistakes. But we do know that on an off day, he can cost you a game. So I
Yeah,
think to say that purely based off the fact that Bella Kotchap's a bit of a physical powerhouse, um, all rounder in that sense, I don't think it's fair enough to say, oh, he's probably not agile enough to play for us, because that's you're talking about one trait
yeah. Now I'm not
that isn't
saying
necessarily that
he's
important.
not agile enough to play for us. I'm just saying, like you said, we're going to be signing a centre back, maybe more than one, um, and one of them is likely to be a Pau Torres, like 30, 40 million pound signing. Um, and then at that point you either don't sign another centre back or you do sign another centre back. And like you say, you're not spending 30 million on a guy who
Fifth choice essentially.
uh, is and is 21 and kind of unproven. Like you know, I'm sure he'd work. I'm sure Emery would get him working fine, but if he's going to be our first choice of centre back, I think you go for somebody who more specifically fits the profile of player that we need. And if he's going to be second choice, then you don't buy a 21-year-old guy for 30 million. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. So now we've covered a Villa player. Let's go on to someone not so linked with Villa. Quite, I think we should cover a couple of players here together. Um, in Messi and Neymar, both rumoured to be leaving PSG. Obviously, Lionel Messi's contract's running out, so he's confirmed to be leaving. Supposedly today, I've read that he might be joining into Miami.
yeah, it
Also
seems
linked
like
with
that's
Barcelona
fairly
and
fairly confirmed now.
yeah, Saudi Arabia as well. What do you think about? I think you're looking at sort of Newcastle, Chelsea, Man United linked with Neymar. What are your thoughts?
I don't know. So is Neymar at the end of his contract or
No, no, I think, well, without revealing what I think about this transfer, I think they're just a bit fed up with him. To be honest,
right?
I think they're looking for a change of style within the club and change of structure.
Yeah,
Because I think we spoke about this in the previous podcast about how PSG needs a change of culture, a complete overhaul if they really want to make it to the
yeah.
big time.
Um, Newcastle, I can't see it because their signings so far under their new owners have been quite smart, quite practical, pragmatic. Neymar is not really that kind of signing. He's like, that's a massively flashy, massively expensive signing. Maybe 5 years down the line, or maybe even, I don't know, depending on how successful they are, 3 or 4 years down the line, they'll start to go for that kind of like really marquee publicity, make you loads of advertising, marketing, sales kind of signing. But I think at this point they're still in the process of trying to establish themselves, and they need smart signings for that. And I think
Yeah,
their transfers have been quite good up to this point, so can't see it for Newcastle.
yeah. No, I'd agree.
Um,
The only thing I would say is I don't think he'll be that expensive. I think PSG are pretty desperate to get him off the books. I think it
right,
could be as little as probably not as little as, but could be as little as 40 million. Leading up to sort of 60.
yeah,
I think that's the kind of fee you might end
yeah,
up going
that
for if
seems
he
pretty
does go.
believable. Because he's like 30 years old now, is he? Keeps getting injured.
Mm. But as you
Um,
say, for Newcastle, they don't need that kind of profile. They need,
no, and he's still an expensive signing
yeah,
because you probably get him on like a 2, 3 year contract, and his wages are ridiculous. So um, yeah, I just don't think he fits what
yeah,
they need right now.
yeah. Newcastle,
Um,
they've been rumoured with what Harvey Barnes, Wilf Zaha, Rafinha. Any one of
yeah,
those players is a better fit. Rafinha would be incredible
yeah,
because his work rate as well as his output is all outstanding attributes that he has. So
yeah,
he would increase the quality in that attack, especially on that from that right hand side, and he would fit that system perfectly because he's a constant presser, constantly harries defenders. He can play from deep. He can also receive it in the final third. He's a progressor and a finisher. He's pretty much an all-round attacker, which is why the likes of Arsenal did want him.
yeah.
You know,
I'm
and he eventually went to Barca. So
I didn't really. I've not. I mean, I've not seen anything of him at Barca. I've heard that he's not done that well. But
That's rubbish.
really,
Yeah, he's done great.
oh,
It's
all
just
right,
because
okay.
Barcelona expect Lionel Messi every time a player comes in. They just go, no, he's not Messi. He's
Uh,
shit.
Fair
It's
enough.
just culture.
Um, yeah, no. Well, I was just going to say I've not really seen anything of him at Barca, but uh, I was very impressed at Leeds. Um, yeah, no. Neymar, Newcastle, can't see it at all. Who else did you say? Chelsea, Man United.
Chelsea, Man United. Yeah, I thing is, I
Man
think
United seems obviously the most likely because this is a kind of stupid signing that they would probably make and have made many of in the past. The
yeah,
only thing that's different is the manager, and Ten Hag seems to have a bit more control over the direction than previous managers have had, and also the fact that the owners are on the way out, possibly not wanting to invest a load of money and are letting the people who know football take the reins a little bit more because they're leaving anyway. Um,
yeah,
so I don't know if I can actually realistically see it happening. Like if I was to put money on it, I'd say he won't go to United. But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised because it is the kind of
yeah. I
thing
mean, I think based on the Anthony deal, purely based on the Anthony deal, I could see him going to United. But if to look at it from any other perspective, if the Anthony deal never happened, and sort of what we have seen, like you said, from Eric Ten Hag and his ability to have a bit more control, pushing out Ronaldo, bringing in players that really aren't big names in order to just fill out a squad in a way that
exactly,
he
yeah.
can
He
adapt it
seems
to
to
win
just sign
games.
players that he knows he needs rather than the sporting director signing a
Yeah,
big name for no reason.
but then just the fact that they bought Anthony for 90 mil and he's been realistically a flop, at least given the fee. Um,
Yeah, maybe. I don't know, but I mean, Anthony was a Ten Hag signings though.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like
It
that's
was
why I
obviously
could see a Neymar signing potentially happening because I think people had these suspicions about him when he was at Ajax that he was a one trick pony. All
hmm,
he really did was receive the ball high up the pitch, cut inside, and take a shot. He wasn't really known for being good at anything else.
yeah.
And people had those suspicions before he came. He's come and he's done exactly what everyone expected. Not worth 90 million at all. And I think realistically, Ten Hag's not stupid. He probably would have known that to a certain extent. Maybe it was a statement from him wanting to show his control over Man United's direction or transfers. I'm not really sure what the thinking was on spending that much money on a player like that, but perhaps that is something that could be repeated, or maybe it'll be a lesson to them. I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
realistically, overall, I don't think it's happening either.
No.
I think the most likely destination of the three we're talking about is Chelsea, but oh my god, do I have many issues with it?
Well, even
Oh
even
god,
Chelsea, they've got Pochettino now, and he's not the kind of manager. It depends. I mean, nobody knows at this point how much control he's going to have. It's completely up in the air.
yeah,
Nobody has a clue. But I can't. I mean, it's Chelsea, right? They always just sign fucking mad players, go over the manager's head. That's just what they do. But at the same time, I can't really see Pochettino as a manager who's going to want to sign Neymar.
oh
He's
yeah,
probably a manager who likes a lot of control. Didn't he? I mean, he managed Neymar at PSG, and one of his main issues at PSG is he couldn't or didn't handle the egos in the dressing room very well.
yeah,
Um, Neymar was presumably a big part of that. Like Poch is not going to want him, and I think Poch will have gone into Chelsea with an agreement that he gets a fair amount of control. But like I said, it's fucking Chelsea.
yeah. I think you could be as optimistic as you like about Neymar's ability um, and what he could do under the right manager or the right system at the right club. But at the end of the day, this is a guy who's been sort of injured for probably half the time he's been at PSG, and
Yeah,
not only that, he's had such a ridiculously stinking attitude the entire time he's been there. He wants to be the centre of attention no matter what. He literally has had his fingers in transfer decisions coaching
Yeah.
decisions, things like that. You can't take a player out of that situation, earning that kind of money, and just drop him into another club, especially one in such disarray like Chelsea is, and just expect it to work. It's just an absolute disaster waiting to happen. Just like pretty much every Chelsea transfer's been so far, except like three maybe, like Badiashile, Fernandez. Is that it? Like
What decent Chelsea transfers?
transfers that Chelsea have made that are just purely the players been playing well in the last like season and a half.
Now, the last season, yeah, basically nobody.
Mm.
Uh, not since what's his name, Todd Bowley or
Yeah,
whatever the fuck.
Todd Bowley. Well, I mean,
Yeah,
you can. It just stinks of him wanting to make a big splash again, just
yeah,
because he can.
I'd love it. I'd absolutely love it.
Yeah, I hope on some level that it happens, just so that we have an even better chance of finishing above them again.
Exactly. I'd love for it to happen because it would be a disaster. Um, and we always want Chelsea to do shit, don't we? Even if Villa aren't challenging them for like European spots, which now we are, which makes us even more strongly want Chelsea to do badly. You know, it's funny when Chelsea fuck up.
Yeah,
So yeah, I'd love it to happen, but I don't know. It really depends on the agreement they've got with Pochettino, I think.
yeah. Well, for my next one, I wanna retract a statement because previously I've said that McAllister would be a shitty transfer to Liverpool for a price of 60 plus 50 plus million. But it seems from the news we're hearing only 35 mil, which I think was pretty much bang on, if not under what we said would be a reasonable fee for him.
Yeah, that's a
So
really good price. Yeah, I'm
yeah,
surprised.
retract that statement.
Um,
I mean,
yeah,
we
we
discussed
talked
it.
about it, didn't we? We both
Yeah,
kind of said that if he that he's a good player, but he's not a 60, 70 million player. He's not a for that money you want somebody who's coming in and changing your team substantially, and he's not going to be that. So we were both kind of thinking McAllister going to Liverpool is going to be a bad transfer, but he's gone
yeah,
for 35 million, which is basically a bargain, really.
yeah.
They
Well,
know that he's a good player. He's going to fit right in. Yeah, can't go wrong with it.
yeah. Well, I mean, if we've discussed it in detail already, so if you want to sort of have a look at what we said, go back to the last podcast. But yeah, essentially, take him off the list. Another player though that Liverpool are linked with, Frank Kessié. Now, in theory, not a bad move. Was a very good quality defender at AC Milan. Made that move to Barcelona. Hasn't had much play time. Could get him on a relatively cheap deal potentially. We've also been linked with him. My my issue here isn't even the price. The price 30 million is probably not the worst. Yeah,
That seems okay.
25 would maybe be preferable just because he's had barely any minutes.
Yeah,
He's clearly not wanted and Barcelona need the cash. My main issue with it is he's not an out and out DM, and if they're bringing him in, I think realistically that's what they need him to be. Because
right.
Fabinho, unless they're backing Fabinho to just come back from the disaster of a season he's had
No, he
and
seems a bit
be
done, doesn't he?
back to this world class DM that he was, unless they're backing him to do that, it just seems like a bit of a poor move because he's not that out and out six. He's more of like that sort of Frankie De Jong character, who yeah he can sit in a midfield too when you're in a defensive position, but he likes to get forward a lot more. He
Yeah,
can
I mean
contribute.
he scored what was I just saw 23 goals in 100 appearances for AC Milan. So he's a decent goal scoring midfielder. Definitely
Yeah, well
wasting his potential at defensive mid.
yeah he's decent at progressing the ball as well. He's a little bit like McAllister in the sense that he's most of his goal scoring does come from penalties. So it does skew him
Uh,
a little bit, but just in the sense that he does like to get forward, he's not really what they should be signing at DM. They'd be much better off going with a great passing DM who's
um,
also got
yeah.
high defensive output.
Did I see them linked with Ugarte?
Yeah, but it looks like he's going to PSG. Um,
Oh shit.
I feel like the fee again while he's very promising and young, is just a little high. But I suppose the fees out of the Portuguese league tend to be quite high these days, just because they seem to bang them
Yeah,
every
and when
time.
it's Chelsea and PSG in for a player, it's always just going to be inflated, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. Like
Um,
when you've got the likes of those clubs going after players, and you know they'll pretty much pay whatever you ask for.
yeah,
You just ask for it, don't you?
you just ask for some random number. Yeah,
Yeah. Name your price. 80.
yeah,
We were
yeah.
thinking 70. Oh yeah, let's do 75
Yeah,
then.
they think
you
they've
know.
got some great bargain. Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, no. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if you've watched a lot of Frank Kessié, but
I've seen him a little bit at Barcelona, like in the Europa League and stuff. I agree. He doesn't seem to operate like a defensive. If they're thinking he's the Fabinho replacement, that seems like that could be a bit of a bad move because you're not making the most of his abilities, and you're putting a player in there who's not really fitting the role. And the fee, like it's like you say, 30 million is a good fee, but it just seems like spending 30 million to put a player in the wrong position and not get the most out of him
yeah,
is a stupid thing to do.
yeah. I mean, yeah. If you're
Um,
bringing in McAllister, that's one centre mid sorted. Keeping Thiago, you assume Henderson still gets minutes. Curtis Jones has been coming into the side. You assume after some of his performances, he probably gets more minutes. You've still got Harvey Elliott, Fabio Carvalho. They've been linked with
yeah,
who's the forward they've been linked with? I forget. They've been linked with a few forwards. I can't remember who it was now. But if they've got Nunez, Gakpo, Jota, Salah, Harvey Elliott can play on the in the wing position. So can Fabio Carvalho. They've got all those players to fit in and give minutes to. They've probably got youth players they still want to bring up. They've got
yeah,
Bajcetic that's probably going to get more game time. If you're
yeah.
going to
That's
bring
the thing. When you
someone
look at
in,
Kessie, he's really similar to like Curtis Jones, um, McAllister, Harvey Elliott. Like he plays that number eight, um, kind of progressive midfielder kind of role.
yeah,
Sometimes moving wide, sometimes getting into the box, dynamic kind of player. That's what Kessie is really. And Liverpool aren't really that. Obviously, they are short in midfield, but in terms of that profile of player, that's one area where they're not really that short. Fabinho, defensive midfielder, is where they're really, really lacking. So
yeah, I think. I mean, just looking at Kessier's FB ref, it's worse than I thought. I thought he might have at least average defensive output. His just go from tackles, interceptions, blocks, clearance, and aerials one, from a percentile across Europe perspective. 18th for tackles, 38th for interceptions, 17th for blocks, 23rd
oh yeah,
for clearances, 51st for aerials one. So he is extremely below average for everything bar interception, aerials one. Interceptions, he's still below average, and aerials one, and he's pretty much bang average. There's not a DM there.
yeah, he's just not a defensive player. I mean, yeah, well, I mean, when I've seen him in the Europa League for Barcelona, where he stands out is progressing the ball in and around the box. He's quite tidy with his feet. He seems like a decent finisher. Um, he's always in and around the box whenever I've seen him. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe they're not thinking of signing him for a defensive mid. Like, I mean, they obviously know this stuff. Then they've got bloody data analysis, so they know that they're going to know he's not a defensive player. So maybe,
Well, of course they know these things, but it still doesn't mean they're going to act accordingly. Like we saw them last season when they desperately needed midfielders sign Arthur, who everyone I think unanimously could have said is
true.
he's dropped off completely. He's not a top class European midfielder anymore. Maybe somewhere he
Yeah,
can be in the right system, but certainly was not suited for Liverpool. They then went and signed for huge money Nunez, um, and then in January for big money still signed Gakpo. It just doesn't make any sense, does it? Like, where it doesn't add up. You've got a
yeah, very
stacked
true.
forward line. You've got, in some aspects, an aging defence that's also quite good when on its day, but then a midfield that's falling apart, and you just completely neglect it. You then name pretty publicly your top target to be Jude Bellingham. completely flop in the league, have absolutely no chance of signing him. It just that nothing seems to add up. And yeah, you say like obviously they know these things. Obviously they've got scouting teams, they've got analysis, but perhaps the thinking or the decision making is just not joined up. So
Yeah, no, true. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's true. It is baffling, really, when you think about it. When you think about football teams and all the analysis that they have available, and then they do sign players and play them out position, sign players they don't need, sign players without having any kind of plan for them or figuring out where you're going to fit them into a system. I think it seems like maybe at Liverpool there's a disconnect between the people who are negotiating transfers, the scouting team, the management, all the different layers are kind of there's some kind of communication error going on there.
well, it
If that's
was
working properly, there's no way that they sign players that Jurgen Klopp doesn't know how to fit into his team. If that's working properly, they identify targets with the manager, and then higher ups go and get them. But that just doesn't seem to be happening. So I feel like there must be something going wrong.
yeah. I think it kind of stems from them losing their director of football. I think it was the end of the
Oh
season before
yeah,
last. I think it was.
that's true. Yeah, I forgot
Um,
that happened.
when they signed Diogo Jota, I heard a lot of people sort of naysaying about that, saying it's like what they're doing, spending that amount of money on him. But when I heard that, I was like, they've done it again. They've just absolutely smashed another signing because you've got there a player who can play on the wing, also play as a false nine. He's very creative, very good finisher. Literally can plug it pretty much any hole across that forward line. Young, Premier League experience, proven that he can deliver in the Premier League. But that was a quality signing. Naby Keita seemed like a quality signing at the time. Someone who could have probably replaced Gigi Wijnaldum in that similar role. Ibrahim Konate looks. I don't want to say he's going to be as good as Van Dijk has been, but he looks when he comes into the side, he really steadies the ship. Uh, much, they look a lot more solid where when he's in the side compared to the likes of Matip and Joe Gomez. So clearly there was a great system in place, but I think we're seeing pretty much instantaneously as their previous football director of football's left. I forget his name. Uh, Things have just fallen apart. So it must be something in the higher ups that's causing that kind of problem.
Yeah,
But
but I might be wrong, but I don't think they've hired another one because I saw them
yeah, they're linked
linked
to a
with.
German guy. I think he's at
Yeah,
Wolfsburg.
so I mean, they've gone like a season, at least two transfer windows without a director of football. So that is going to cause problems when it comes to signing players, isn't it? Inevitably.
Yeah, I can't think that Jurgen Klopp's had a whole lot to do with each of those signings.
No, exactly. It's like Klopp knows the team better than anyone. He's the guy who won them the Champions League, won them the league. There's no way that he doesn't identify what he needs in midfield. There's no way that he goes after Gakpo and Nunez for like 100 million plus. Um, while they're good players and while Gakpo's been quite good, and no doubt, he'll find a way of fitting them in. There's no way that if Klopp's got a lot to do with the signings, they prioritise two random forward players
Yeah,
over midfielders.
yeah. Well, I suppose we can sort of move on from Liverpool now. I think we've covered them fairly well. Uh, what are Real Madrid thinking when it comes to Kai Havertz? Have you seen this room?
No,
They're looking at Kai Havertz probably cost you 40, 50 mil to put up top in that Benzema role. I'm not. I Yeah.
what?
The only thing I can think is he, while he was performing at Bayer Leverkusen, I suppose his profile was quite similar to what Benzema's was at Madrid, in terms of that number nine who would drop back a bit of a second striker, false nine role, would bring other players into it, was great in the air. that sort of thing. But
Yeah,
just the time he's had at Chelsea, I don't. It's hard to say whether it's been because of the coaches he's been under and their style, or whether he has just been that bad as an individual. I think
you
it's
know,
definitely a
he's
mixture of
been there a
both.
while now, and they've had successful periods while he's been there, but he has never actually looked good, even when Chelsea have been playing well. Um, I think he's a very unique player, isn't he? Like his
Yeah,
skills are very unique, very interesting, and he's the kind of player that will need a specific manager and a specific system to get the best out of him. I mean, he's not going to replace Benzema, is he? He has maybe he's good at dropping deep and bringing other players into the game, but he's not got the physicality, the finishing, the goal scoring instinct. Like he's,
I think he might have the physicality.
I don't.
He's not
I
the.
mean,
I'm not
he's
saying he's Romelu Lukaku, but like he's certainly not a pushover. I don't think.
no, I don't think he's a pushover, but he's not. Benzema had a fairly significant physical aspect to his game, and it meant that you could stick him up top in the middle of the pitch, and even games when they weren't seeing any of the ball and he was completely isolated, he'd be able to fashion things. But I don't see that for Havertz. I think if
I
they want him
yeah.
to go into the Benzema role, I don't. I think he doesn't have the kind of all-round physical aspect to his game that allowed Benzema to function so well in that position.
Mm.
I mean, Harry Kane. I've seen him linked with Harry Kane for that role. Kane can do that. While he's not very fast, he's kind of got the he's got the strength, the height, the aerial prowess to hold the line. I mean, it's kind of what he does at Tottenham. Kane would fit in well, perfectly well there, I think. But
Yeah, well, I mean, they're supposedly looking to bid 69 million. Rather strange number to pick, but
for Kane,
yeah.
well, that's not going to get him, is it?
Well, you wouldn't think so, but I think Tottenham apparently would rather lose him for free than sell him for 120 mil to United, for example.
Well, so they just don't want him to go to an English club,
Yeah, that's
basically.
pretty much their thinking. They're just like, just someone abroad take him. But back to Kai Havertz, I think while I certainly don't agree with the transfer, I don't think it's a good signing. Not for the fee at all. If it is going to be, 40, 50 million.
What was the so at 40,
And
50 mil?
and
Yeah.
I don't think he's been good enough to really justify a move to Real Madrid. Part of me kind of thinks in that side, under Carlo Ancelotti, playing an even more reserved version of what Benzema was, even more of a facilitator, bringing Rodrigo and Vinicius into the game as more of an attacking focal point than they were with Benzema there. It could work maybe. Like there's part of me that's like before I heard this, I never had a hope for Kai Havertz making anything of his career. Right? I just thought, okay, at some point he's going to leave
Okay,
Chelsea,
brutal. Yeah.
and he's just going to be an average top five league player probably. But there's just something about this that makes me think this could just be one of those transfers that out of nowhere just absolutely bangs.
Yeah, I do see a bit where you're coming from because I mean the fee is the thing that like throws the whole thing off. If it was towards the end of his contract and he cost 25 million, I'd think fuck it, yeah, Real Madrid can't really get that wrong with that. The fee makes it a big risky transfer if you can sign him for 40, 50 million. But you know, I do see the element that it's Real Madrid. He's going into a much better team. He's going into a club that operates well, like as a unit. He's not going. He's going from a complete shambles to a well-run club, basically.
Yeah,
To a better manager, better players around him. Yeah, I wouldn't write him off if he went to Real Madrid. Um,
I certainly think as well he'd be a good backup player to come in because obviously if Benzema's leaving, he's going to have to fill in as in the starting 11 probably this season. But then if you're looking at next season, uh, Real Madrid will probably go out and get one of Osimhen, Mbappe, Kane, if not this season, next season, um, potentially even Haaland, depending on what City do with his contract. They'll probably go out and get one of those players, and having Kai Havertz as someone who's down, probably very much down to be a backup at Real Madrid, and who could play a slightly different role to each of those other players that I mentioned, I think is not a bad option at all. But yeah, the biggest issue with this is that because of his form, because of his lack of performance, it is a big risk, especially for the fee.
Yeah, I think if they signed him and they didn't sign another big striker, i.e. Kane, Mbappe, whoever, this season, and they went into next season with Havertz as a starting number nine for 40, 50 million, like, you know, there's no way you can't say that's not a big fucking risk. Um, Not to say it won't work, because I think he's a good player. Like, he's a very unique player. In some ways, I like his skill set a lot. It's just figuring out a system where it works is really difficult. But he's got a lot about him that makes him a really good player.
Yeah,
I wouldn't write him off, but yeah, big risk if they sign him and no one else to go up front. Like, could go terribly.
yeah. Well, I think that
Sure.
his best period is when he's had a big number nine to play off, and Real Madrid don't have one.
Yeah, exactly. I can't see him filling that gap at number nine. They play quite an expansive style of football, especially in big games where they sit back really deep, and the pitch is like wide open. And I just can't. I'm imagining him now in my mind drifting around doing absolutely nothing in loads of space, just not finding the ball. Not, I just can't. I can't imagine it
Fair enough.
without. I can see it with like you say, like the right players around him, another big striker up there with him, because he's a good passer. He's good on the ball. He's a good progressive player. It's just his finishing, his instinct to find the back of the net just doesn't seem there. And he is one of those players who really does disappear if the team's having a bad game. That's the thing with
Absolutely.
Benzema, is that Benzema would like grab the game by its bollocks and just go and win it for you. Havertz is not that player. Um, yeah, I'd like to see it with another player out there with him. Like, I think that could work really well, but they'd need another signing. I think I'd be pretty worried if I was a Real Madrid fan and they just signed Kai Havertz up front.
Yeah. Another. So I want to bring it back down to little old England for a second. It's, ignore Real Madrid. uh, Back to Southampton. Right. James Ward-Prowse. And you're smiling because you know what I think. But the clubs he's been linked with, we're looking at West Ham, Villa, is it Wolves, um,
um,
No, not
yeah,
Crystal Palace,
maybe Everton. Don't know.
Everton.
Probably.
Each of those teams, Everton, right? They like to play two DMs. West Ham, they play two central midfielders, usually more defensive. Wolves tend to play two central midfielders, a bit more box to box. Maybe that's a little more Ward-Prowse style. We play
Yeah.
two DMs, and he's definitely not better than Dougie Luiz. I mean, Dougie Luiz, people won't like me saying this, but Dougie Luiz has been better than Guimaraes this season. Like, genuinely. They play the same role, but Dougie's outperformed him. Simple
Yeah.
as. They play the same role, and I think he's got 11 goal involvements, whereas Guimaraes has got 9. I think Guimaraes had a small period out injured, but at the same time, like, you can only perform in the games you play, and he's proven it. I just don't think Ward-Prowse, for example, is going to displace a solid DM with his skill set. Yes, he's got
No.
great set piece delivery and he occasionally contributes in and around the box. Is he really that good of a technical player
No.
where he does anything else than just move the ball around for a big team? Like, I could see him in a sort of Xhaka role, if you know what I mean,
Yeah.
at Arsenal. But
Yeah.
then again, even then, I'm
No,
I'm not
I
like,
don't think he's Arsenal level though.
yeah, I wouldn't go out and sign him for that. He needs to play
No.
in a possession side. Ideally, he's not really suited to counter-attacking football. He hasn't got huge defensive numbers, as far as I'm aware.
Mm.
So it's just a case of, for the kind of fee that they're probably going to ask for, who takes him and where does he fit in? I'm not really sure.
Well, as you were talking, I was thinking you were going through the teams. I was thinking Wolves is the one that stood out because they're losing Ruben Neves, aren't they?
Yeah,
Um, they're not like hugely similar players, but I think Ward-Prowse could possibly work in that role if he was alongside a solid defensive player. Um, but I don't know. It depends on the system, like you say, because I think he's not good enough for like a top four team. He's not good enough to go play at Arsenal week in week out. Um,
I think he could fill a similar role to the way Trossard has at Arsenal. Like if you're
really?
going to bring in like a Declan Rice, for example, or say you're going to start Jorginho alongside, or Jorginho or Xhaka alongside Partey, he could be the backup for sure. I think, and occasionally
Yeah.
start because he did get 9 goals and 4 assists. But I think with the clubs he's been linked with, I just don't see it. I just,
No. I don't know. I don't. I've never rated him as like an incredibly good player. He's obviously
yeah,
a good player. He's solid. He's fine. Um, his standout attribute is obviously his set pieces, and that's where so many of his goal and assist numbers come from. His
yeah.
set piece, and for teams like Arsenal, they haven't got space in the team for a player who is basically average, except for exceptional set pieces. They need a player who's good or exceptional at a number of things, and Ward-Prowse is not really that player. Um, I
He
think he fits in at a kind of what Southampton were for most of the time he was there, kind of mid-table side who play a system where he can play number eight, progress the ball, um,
well, he's not even
get
good at
forward,
progressing the
not have
ball.
too
That's the
much
thing. This
responsibility.
is a bit of a misleading factor with Ward Prowse. Is most of his output genuinely comes from set pieces.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah,
in
yeah. What I
open
mean by
play, he's
progress the
not
ball is
great.
like
He's he, when
he's short passes, right? That's what he does. He
well,
picks
no,
up the
not
ball.
really. He's bang on average for progressive passes. Like if you look at
Yeah, no, I
across
know.
his passing attributes, in terms of where he ranks, even just above average, it's purely passes completed. Like that's it in terms of
Yeah,
sorry, passes attempted. Even that's it. When it comes to what you want from a number eight progressing the ball, he just doesn't really do that enough. And
no,
maybe that's because
yeah,
he played at Southampton, and perhaps his instructions were a
yeah.
little different. Like he makes quite a few interceptions, which is good, which is what you want from a number eight, who's going to drop back potentially into a two or a box to box. But you don't want him playing a number six role alongside another sort of number six.
No, but he's quite a good presser of the ball. Um, I think in a good team, in a team that's operating properly, he plays in a similar sort of position on the pitch to what number eight plays, but he plays more of a kind of aggressive defensive role where he presses the ball, and then when he wins the ball, he plays the simple pass to the more creative players. It's basically what he does, and then he operates kind of in and around the edge of the box because he's quite a decent finisher from open play.
Yeah,
Like he's
that's
got
one.
good technique,
That's one
basically.
aspect you can say he has got.
Yeah, but that's a very specific position. And like I said, even if like a top four team like Arsenal had the perfect position outlined for him, he's still not good enough at at enough things to justify his position. I don't think.
I
Um,
I think you can liken him a bit to McAllister in the sense that McAllister isn't really a number eight because he's too attacking, doesn't really have the physicality to drop back so much. He's more of a goal scorer, um, but he's not as tidy on the ball as McAllister, not as good a passer
no,
as McAllister. I think he could play a really good role in a Newcastle side, pressing and being a goal scorer just off the number nine.
yeah, yeah. I mean, they Newcastle have played with Jacob Murphy quite a lot this season, and he'd be a fucking upgrade on Jacob Murphy because Newcastle press really high, right? That's a big feature of their team this season, is they press really well.
Yeah,
Uh, I could definitely see Ward-Prowse fitting in there because they've also got players. They'll also have players around him in midfield to kind of um, to do the things defensively that he's not as good at, and also are more creative than him, and more effective on the ball. So yeah, I could see that, but again, it's a very specific role. Depends how much money he's going to cost. Like to be fair, as much as we've kind of been um, kind of shitting on him, if Newcastle got him for 20-25 million, even as a squad player, that's a fine signing. He gives you something off the bench with set pieces, and
I wouldn't say
you know
20 to 25.
what too much.
Yeah, for me,
Well, I think so. I don't like. I wouldn't want Villa to sign him for 25 mil, but realistically, he's probably going to cost around that, right? Just
yeah,
because he's Southampton's standout player, and there will probably be fair few mid-table Premier League teams
yeah. I mean, I
interested.
think for the attributes that he has, because he has a few standout attributes which don't really lend themselves well to any specific role that you'd play in like a very structured side. If a team like, for example, a Nottingham Forest went for him, uh, and they wanted him to play really far up the pitch, I'd rate that. Not so much for the fee that it's probably going to cost, and not so much because I think their team's set up now ready for him to jump straight in. But if a smaller team or was there to give him a big role in a very attacking role, sorry, a big part to play in a very attacking role, or whether a team, a big team like Arsenal was there to give him that kind of Xhaka role, maybe like a Gundogan role, but obviously Gundogan's a far superior player. He would never be able to fulfill that. But that sort of number eight that's basically turns into a number 10 sort of second striker in attack.
Yeah,
I, I,
yeah.
I could see that, but
If
you're
Arsenal or
looking at very
Newcastle signed
niche
him as like
areas
a
there.
squad player who can fill in a various uh, midfield positions, then that would be fine. Um, Similarly, like you say, if a smaller team signed him with a particular role in mind for him, where they'd be making the most of his like good technique and good pressing ability, then yeah. But it's I think the fee again, kind of saying this about all the signings, but the fee is the concern because he's by far and away Southampton's most notable player. Um, he's had loads of interest in him every transfer window. There will be a few clubs in for him. He's going to be the player Southampton demanding money for out of anyone.
Yeah.
Um, and if Wolves or Everton or whoever sign him for like 25-30 million, I'm kind of thinking that's a bad signing, to be honest.
Yeah, it does not progress their team forward.
No,
It
it
doesn't
doesn't do enough
add
for their team,
something to their
basically.
team that really allows them to push up the table. It
Yeah,
just
he doesn't. He
gives
doesn't add
them.
something that they couldn't get from like a 7 million player from Spain. Feel like there's
With the
players
set
out there
pieces.
without the reputation. Yeah, accept that. But for the money he's going to cost, there's plenty of players out there who can do a similar role. Um,
Or play a slightly different role and also offer you some of the output, or if not all of the output he offers, but will do a lot more in other
yeah,
with other parts of
yeah,
their
yeah,
game. Progressing the ball, creating chances, not from set pieces. Because yes,
yeah,
set piece delivery is great and it's important in the Premier League, especially if you have targets to hit in the box. But especially if you're Wolves, for example, and your strikers are god awful, I just don't know how useful Ward-Prowse is actually going to be to you. Because if there's no one there to finish the chances, it doesn't
no.
matter how many he creates. That aspect of his game becomes
That's the
almost
thing. I
useless.
just it feels kind of wrong relying on a player so heavily on set pieces. If you're signing a player for 25-30 million and all you're getting is set pieces, there's so many ways that could go wrong. Um, most teams have a decent set piece taker in the side. I feel like in this day and age, especially, maybe 15 years ago when teams used to play with more physical centre backs, more physical strikers, the game was generally more focused around set pieces. Maybe he'd be a more sought after, valuable player. But nowadays, I just think you've got to be more well rounded to justify the kind of price tag that Southampton are probably going to want for him.
Yeah.
Um,
God,
I don't know.
if he
I
was
don't know.
like if he was a second striker or like a false nine, he would seem like a great player to go for. And maybe that's a little bit of genius from me. Like, oh, go on, Eddie Howe, take him in a false nine second striker role. But it's too much of a risk when he's been playing central midfield at Southampton.
Is yeah. I mean, he's like 28. Um, he's kind of old to start playing him in a brand new position, which might not work. If he was 21, and then everyone's thinking, oh, this player, he looks alright. His technique's amazing, but we don't really know where he fits in. And then somebody's like, oh, we'll buy him and try him out in a new position. Fine, but he's 28. Like, if you spend 25 million on him and then it turns out he can't play fucking second striker, then like you just flopped to sign him badly. Um,
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's probably enough of bashing Ward Prowse. We'll leave him
yeah,
be for the
poor
rest of
Prowse,
this Wednesday evening.
poor guy.
He's probably crying on
Yeah,
his
I do
plane
find
to
him. I
Southend.
do find him a bit of an annoying player though, because I feel like he just gets so much praise because of like his great numbers and because his set pieces are incredible. But his numbers really do just come from the set pieces. It's kind of annoying
Yeah,
how overlooked that element is. Anyway, let's shut up about him.
yeah. Have you got any other players you'd like to bring to the table? Someone you don't
Can we
want to
just?
see move, or huge fee that you don't think's worth it?
I don't know. We've seemed to have. I feel like we've talked about all the ones that I had in mind. The Benzema thing. I mean, we didn't really talk about Messi. Um,
Messi is the same thing as that Barcelona have always had, really, isn't it? Oh well, I should just say he has just announced that he signed for Inter Miami, literally as we speak. So um, this is kind of irrelevant now. But if Barca were going in for him again, yeah, just Barcelona in an absolute stinking mess again. Just making signings for publicity, for the feel, the vibes, never really for okay, how do we actually sustainably build
yeah.
a team that can
Um,
challenge? Because yeah, they built a team that won the league, but they flopped in the Champions League, and not sustainably because they spent far too much money on players, sold the rights to like half of their merchandising, 75% of their broadcast rights, their own in terms of likeness, like the license to their own
mm,
brand. I guess I don't know how you would describe that, but it's just a club in absolute disarray. And any signing for me that isn't free or is not a sale is just Barca, what you doing? It's a dangerous
yeah,
game.
they do seem like one of those. They seem like nothing, just nothing comes off for them. It seems like they either sign a player who they obviously don't need. They sign a player who should have been purchased for 20 million, but they paid 55. You very rarely look at a Barcelona signing and think, ah, smart.
Yeah, I mean Cassier seemed smart. Oh,
Yeah, I mean, I think they've turned a bit of a corner because since Alaman has come in, they seem to have been
sorry,
making more smart
I've
transfers.
just got the conference league on in the background, and someone's thrown something at the back of one of the Fiorentina's players' head, and he's absolutely covered in blood. So that's interesting.
Fuck.
Yeah, that's going to be looked at. But yeah, sorry. Yeah, Christensen looked smart. I think Christensen was smart.
He's done
Cassier
well,
could
yeah.
have
That,
been
that was a good
smart if
signing,
they
actually.
lost De Jong, but they didn't, and so he's just been a bit part player. Um, Lewandowski was so not smart. Like,
No.
yeah, he's been a great player because of course it's Lewandowski. But I mean, how much did they spend on him? Was it 40?
Yeah, something like that. It wasn't
Something like,
cheap, was it? It wasn't.
in the state that they're in,
Insignificant.
40 million is not an amount of money they can afford to be paying for a 34-year-old. It's
No.
just the where's. Do you know what? We're not talking about Barcelona because he's gone to Inter Miami. But you'll be surprised to hear I don't agree with this one either. Uh, thing is, in the MLS, they're trying to build up that league, right? And they have a great position to do so because in the US
Mm.
they have pretty much the most developed marketing sort of world in terms of corporate world there is. They've got huge coverage across the world. We've seen what just having Ryan Reynolds and Rob McClenny, or however you pronounce his name, Wrexham has done for them. There's a lot of much better ways they can go about turning the MLS into a big league around the world than trying to sign Lionel Messi. Lionel Messi will bring eyes to that league, don't get me wrong, and into Miami because it's Lionel
Yeah,
Messi and everyone wants to see what Lionel Messi does no matter where he is. But for the integrity of your league and the long term success of the league, you need to cut out this idea of signing ex European players on huge money and continuously build up your
yeah,
league with young players, whether they're from the US or abroad, and actually make your team's destination where players want to come, whether it's to develop and take the next step or whether it's to actually achieve
yeah.
something in America.
I mean, Messi doesn't make the league more competitive, does he? For players, for other players moving to the MLS, Messi playing for Inter Miami
It does nothing
doesn't really
apart
make the league
from,
more appealing
yeah,
for you to play in.
and the amount of money he's
Except
going
like,
to be paid as well. I mean, let's have a look at this article here. I don't know if it says.
yeah, it is annoying. I was reading all the Saudi Arabia transfer rumors and stuff. Like Benzema's just gone there, Kante has just gone there. Messi was obviously rumored to be going there. And it was reminding me of China a few years ago. Do you remember when China started signing? Like they signed Oscar from Chelsea
Yeah, but
for loads
they've
of money,
signed quite a few.
and
Hulk, Oscar,
Hulk. Yeah, they had
um,
a period where China seemed to be signing loads of random players, and they were clearly doing
huge
it
wages.
with the
Carlos
same intention
Tevez.
that, yeah, that that Saudi Arabia are now trying to do, and the MLS, and it didn't work with China. You know, like this doesn't happen anymore in China because there's no money in the Chinese league because there's no interest in it whatsoever.
Well,
Um,
the league also did bring in a stipulation where I can't remember exactly what it was, but there was either a wage cap or when the wages went above a certain amount, or if it was a foreign player, the club had to equally invest sort of 50% or 100% of what they were paying the player into
mm,
Chinese football youth development. So I think
ah,
they basically made it doubly as expensive to sign an expensive player,
yeah,
and you had to do a lot of extra work on top of it.
right.
I think that was partly what led to that,
That's
which is good
interesting.
for
It's
Chinese
interesting
football.
because
But
yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, that's never going to happen in Saudi Arabia or in the MLS. You know,
yeah, well, Saudi Arabian
um,
clubs have only just been made of like companies. They were basically, I'm pretty sure. Well, I mean, there still are really property of the state because it's was the same people that own Newcastle that own all the biggest clubs in the
yeah,
Saudi league. It's it's basically a money making project. The Saudi league. It's not really a
yeah,
sort of footballing. There's no footballing heritage there. There's no sort of sense of history or competition that they're trying
yeah.
to
Well, there's no
build on top
interest in
of.
competition, really, is there?
Yeah, it's just what players can we get into this league, no matter what team they're playing for. I think that's literally one
Yeah,
of the things that was mentioned with Benzema potentially, or it could have been Ronaldo. It's like, here's your pay offer. Now just pick a team, and this team will pay you that. Like, it's not about
it's really
football.
weird, man.
It's just about publicity. MLS haven't done that to an extent that you've seen the likes of China uh, and Saudi Arabia and Qatar try to do that, because when I think their highest paid player per year is Shaqiri, who's on I think 8 9 million a year, which isn't
Right.
like the most money ever. Like, it's expensive for sure, but it's not, these
No,
outrageous
I do feel
20,
like the
30,
MLS has
40 million
more
pound.
integrity
Yeah,
as a competition that values like actual sport.
yeah. But the thing is,
Um,
going for Lionel Messi, his feet, the amount of money that's going to be in that involved in that deal is going to be far more than what Shaqiri's getting paid. It's going to be, you've got to think at
yeah, yeah,
least
yeah,
20, 30 million a year,
yeah,
surely. Like, he's not going to move there for anything unless I did read that he's doing deals with Adidas and Apple as part of this, but I,
yeah. Sort
I
of.
don't know if that's to make up for the wages that they're not paying him, or
Mm,
it just, that seems a bit dodgy to me. It just doesn't scream of lined up thinking for a long-term sustainable future for the MLS and bringing it, to be more of a world, not powerhouse, but at least a destination and somewhere that people want to watch. Because that's
Mm,
why the Premier League is such a powerhouse from a money and performance perspective, is because it was marketed well. We brought in
yeah,
these big players and big managers, but it's also pushed to so many parts of the world uh, through so many different channels that everyone knows about these players and these teams, and everyone wants to watch them because they've grown up either watching them or grown up hearing about them, even if they live in the middle of a random city in India. These are
hmm,
still big players, still big names. Whereas you can guarantee that football fans, most football fans in, for example, I don't know, um, Saudi Arabia, have absolutely no idea who Lois Openda is, or Loic Openda. I can't remember his first name. Lois, I think it's Lois Openda, who's one of the top 10 goal scorers in Europe this season. They probably have no
yeah,
idea who Folarin Balogun is, or they probably have no idea. Uh, they probably don't even know Osimhen. They're probably just thinking
probably not. No.
who plays for Real Madrid, Barcelona, PSG, Man City, Man United, Liverpool, Chelsea. That's the kind of teams they look at, because those are the teams that have managed to market themselves. And the Premier League have sort of all, with at least the top six, have kind of emulated that. And as a league as a whole, done it to a greater extent than any other league has been able to. So if MLS really want to be on that level, they can't just be bringing in every couple of years one huge player that plays for one club. You've got to build the league up slowly so that eventually all the teams can
Yeah,
have a wide variety of great players, attract great managers, have genuine competition at a high level. Because when it's just one team, one player, or one manager, it just doesn't work,
yeah.
does
Well,
it?
that's the thing
It's
with the
like
Premier League
PSG.
is that the Premier League had the basis of a strong competition. Even when all the money started coming in like the early 2000s, there was still a base there of a really competitive league with a lot of history. And so when one team like Chelsea started getting loads and loads of money, there were other teams there who still had the infrastructure and the good players and the good managers to compete. And then so the kind of money that Chelsea brought in kind of almost like brought other teams up to that level to the point where other teams could then start spending loads of money. And it was kind of like a knock on effect. But like you say, it wasn't just one team like sprinting ahead of everyone else, spending loads of money with everyone else, and then leaving everybody else behind. The Premier League had a foundation of strong competition, and the entire league was lifted when money started coming in through
Yeah,
rich owners or whatever. But the MLS doesn't have that. It never has had that. I mean, maybe big signings like this is kind of part of a transition because the MLS has improved as a league, um, and there is more interest in it now, I think, than there
yeah,
was maybe 10 years ago. And part of that is definitely the fact that they've had like ex players going over there, Vieira and David Beckham owning football teams there and stuff like that.
yeah. I mean, I suppose players like Thierry and Ibra going over there did do a lot for the league, because you still see a lot of clips. Well, I do at least on social media of, uh, especially Ibra, time he had there and stuff he did. Wayne Rooney when he went, and from that perspective, it can bring eyes to the league, but that doesn't get people watching on match days. It doesn't elevate your team and the players around that player. It just creates a storyline. Um,
Yeah,
and maybe that gets you a few more
no, it's
eyes
a
on the
kind of
league, but yeah,
it's just a kind of a shallow way of going about it, isn't it? Basically, I feel like it does it does have an effect in some way in increasing interest, which then increases money, which then there will inevitably be some sort of trickle effect when one really rich club gets loads of money. There'll be more interest in the league as a whole, and that will kind of have an impact on everybody. But it's certainly not the best way of going about it, and it seems like a kind of a shallow way of going about it, where basically the main interest in these signings is not the football, it's not the sport, it's not the rigor of the competition, it's the size of the name on the back of the shirt,
Yeah,
um, which is
it's
just kind of just shallow and just shit, really.
yeah, it's kind of like influencer marketing in a way, isn't it? It's like they
Yeah,
purely buy it because of the face, but when the face is gone,
yeah,
it's just a blank canvas that is the same as any
yeah,
other.
exactly. There's nothing there. I think to be fair, there's probably an element of both that you actually need if you're trying to develop a league. I think you need a combination of improving your infrastructure, making the competition better, etc., generating interest in the league as a whole. I do think that there's probably a part in there for marquee signings that
Yeah,
make it more exciting. It's not that it
yeah,
shouldn't ever happen. It's just that if that's your main strategy, or if it's just one team doing it, then it's just never going to work.
yeah. Well, yeah, as you said,
And it
it's not
doesn't
completely.
doesn't make it interesting.
Yeah, it's not completely void of value, but if you want to make your league a more sustainable, long-term, attractive place for bigger players to come, for players to develop, uh, and potentially compete in much bigger competitions in the future, the best way to do that is get people more people watching on a match day, and the best way you can get more people watching on a match day is not just uh, trying to get more people involved in your own country, which of course they will, but it's doing it abroad, because even if, for example, say you have a marketing campaign in the US, right, and it's whatever it is, whatever style you go about it, it's trying to get people interested in the upcoming MLS season, right? Most of the people have already heard of it, so you're getting small change out of that, gradual
Yeah,
increases, but small amounts of change. If you were to have that same marketing campaign, say in Egypt, right, there's going to be a huge amount of people seeing that have never thought about the MLS before, never watched the MLS before, maybe have but just didn't really see it as something um, particularly of note, worthy of looking at. When you see, especially in mainstream media, if you see advertising campaigns, or your well, the league or the teams get huge amounts of exposure, especially in mainstream context, it gives a certain amount of like validity, like validation and credit to that league, and people will begin to think, oh, that's actually a team that or a league that other people must watch, because otherwise why would I be seeing this? And
yeah,
then people generally will start to watch it because of what it is, and not because of one player that goes there, for example. Because it's like with Messi, if he goes, maybe lots of people from Argentina watch it, lots of people from around the world watch into Miami's games. But then when he retires or
oh,
when he
sorry.
moves on, only a small number of those people will stay, because really they were there for one
Yeah,
thing, and that one thing's gone.
there, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
if you attract people because the league seems like an attractive thing, or you're able through exposure and marketing to get people excited about a match day and one team playing another, that's how you get fans that will stay there long term, and you'll generate much higher match day revenue, and generating higher match day
yeah,
revenue leads to all the other benefits around the football club structure and
yeah.
size that you want. So yeah, well, all in all, Lionel Messi to Miami. I still think he could play a role in Europe, but just where is the
Yeah,
question. But I mean, it's done
yeah.
now. But
Well, it's annoying with Messi because like no matter how old he'll get, his marketability will always make him expensive. He could be 55 and a Premier League club could sign him just to put him on the bench and bring him on for 2 minutes at the end of the game, and he'd still be expensive because people would get the chance to buy a fucking Everton shirt with Messi on the back. Like he's gone past the point now of ever being a sensible signing for someone. Even if like at this point he's still a good player, he's still technically really good. He doesn't seem to the kind of physical limitations of getting old haven't impacted him to a detrimental point. Like, I mean, he just won the World Cup. Um, he could definitely still do a role, but I think his marketability means that he goes to clubs who only want to sign him for his name, which like Inter Miami and some Saudi Arabia and team. So yeah, a bit of a shame. It'll be fun to see him still in Europe, but it is what it is.
It is what it is. Right, I want to
Yeah.
end on a Villa transfer because we've
Woo!
gone for a little while now. This was supposed to be a short
Up
one,
the
but
fucking Villa.
yeah. Well, you say up the Villa, great, but unfortunately, it's another, of course, transfer that I don't like the sound of. I'm not too pleased about.
Don't say Tielemans.
Well, Tielemans, I'm not sure about, but not enough to put him in this
I want
video.
Tielemans, man.
Um, it's actually Silencio Somerville.
Yeah, okay.
I've seen us link with him in the past couple of days. Mm, I'm going to give you a few reasons why I think we shouldn't sign him. Right,
hmm
Jacob Ramsey, Aaron
Jacob Ramsey.
Ramsey,
Jacob Ramsey.
Philogene Badace, um, and then potentially Nico Williams, Pedro Goncalves, Lee Kang In. All of those are reasons why we shouldn't sign Silencio Somerville. We have youth players that we could give opportunities to in those positions. He's not been outstanding. He's contributed a few, I think, what is it? I think maybe like 5 or 6 goals and
Yeah,
assists.
four, four,
Um,
4 goals, 2 assists,
yeah, in what is it, 20 something appearances
28.
for a relegated team. I just don't see why. Like, yeah, he's a good dribbler, he's talented, but there's lots of young players like that. Like
Yeah, how
Badace is
much did
like
it
that.
cost?
Probably 20 million because Leeds are Leeds and they'll ask for that.
Yeah.
It's not
Um,
worth it in any sense. I don't think. If we're going to play two
no.
up top as well, that only leaves room for
Yeah, I don't think we
two
need him. I
wingers
think,
attacking midfielders. And we've got plenty.
like you say, we'll sign a winger and it'll be a first choice, bigger name than that. So that's one winger. We've got Jacob Ramsey is basically nailed down left wing. And then in terms of backup, well, I mean, I think Emery will keep Bailey around. I think he sees something in Bailey. I
Apparently,
think
he
he
likes
sees
him.
some. Yeah, I think he sees some. I mean, he's always played him, even when he's been kind of crap. Um, I think he sees some value in Bailey just in his like pure sort of physical pace, and I mean, he's got quite a good left foot. He's inconsistent and annoying, but
Oh,
I think
very,
Emery sees
very
value
inconsistent,
in
very
his
annoying.
potential as a squad player. So
Yeah.
we've got Bailey. We're going to sign a winger, first choice winger. We've got Bailey. Jacob Ramsey's nailed down a spot, and then we've got, like you say, Aaron Ramsey and Buendia. Also, if we're signing a striker and are going to play two up top, Buendia is going to be either rotating in the second striker role or as an option on the wing. So yeah, I don't think we need him. He will be a bit expensive because they only signed him last year. He's young and
No, I think
it's
they've
Leeds.
had him for a while as a youth player. I'm pretty sure.
Really?
Yeah, Silencio Somerville. I think he went on loan
They
somewhere.
signed him. Oh, okay, right. Okay.
I mean, you might be right. Maybe he came from Feyenoord, but
Well,
um,
no, I think you might be right. I think he went on loan to the Dutch.
yeah, where did
Yeah,
he?
he was a Feyenoord youth player,
Yeah, he
and
went
then
on loan.
well, no, they signed him 2020, so they signed him 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So he's only made 28 Leeds appearances in 3 years.
Well, apparently 42
Oh, is
in
that all competition? 28. Oh, right. No,
four
yeah,
goals and
28.
42 appearances for Leeds.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, just no
Nah,
thanks.
we just don't need him. If he was either really cheap or we really needed depth. I mean, I can't see any situation where 20 million is a good price for Somerville actually. So no,
Yeah,
just
well,
no.
that's just my estimated
Uh,
price, but I'd have much rather seen um, Reece Nelson come in for that. Much
Yeah, I've
rather.
seen that Nelson's going to be signing a new contract at Arsenal
Yeah,
apparently.
just shows exactly the kind of player we could have got.
We've
But there
got
you
Yuri
go.
Tielemans.
Yeah, well, yeah, I don't want to go too much into him because,
Why? He's fucking
well, I
amazing.
haven't really looked into it enough to speak on it. I mean,
Just need to watch his goal in the FA Cup final.
yeah, but it's just his physicality. I question. I don't.
He's
I
a
need to look
really
into
good
it though. I'm
defensive
not really
player.
sure. I'm not really sure.
He's a really good defensive player. I think he's overlooked a little bit in terms of like his work rate and his actual defensive ability.
I
I mean,
get
he's
he's
not
got
like
talent. He's got ability, but I just don't know about if he fits the system. That's just my
anybody
question.
with a fucking technique like that fits the system, man. He like
What
kicks the
Ward-Prowse?
ball in a beautiful way. Fuck Ward Prowse. Tielemans is Ward Prowse times a million.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But anyway, let's wind this down because we're gonna end up going for 2 hours if we keep talking.
Yeah, all right. I'll
Uh,
wind it down, and you can go. You can go research Yuri Tielemans,
no, I'm gonna go eat my dinner.
and you can
um,
research Yuri Tielemans while you eat your fucking dinner.
yeah, I just haven't watched enough Leicester to be honest. But anyway, anyone who's watching, thanks for watching. Let us know how wrong or right we are in the comments if you even watching at this point, because I think our last video got 5 views. So if any of you five are watching,
We've got 5 loyal
comment,
followers.
comment. We don't know. We don't even have any subscribers. But anyway, yeah, like,
So
comment,
loyal they
subscribe.
don't need to subscribe.
If you're listening on Spotify, then follow, because we might have followers on there. I don't know. I don't get notifications about that. But anyway, that's it from me. That's it from Matt. I'm gonna go eat dinner and watch Yuri Tielemans highlights. Uh, yeah, adios.
See ya.